a life story about Polina, who worked as a paramedic in an ambulance. She had recently divorced her husband, and her little son, Genka, stayed under the care of her neighbour, Varvara Ilyaniknaya, when her mother was on shift. Worries for divorce and for the family destroyed by her husband completely brought our heroine to despair. But she did not give up. And only one strange call completely changed her life. Arriving at the call, the paramedic ambulance noticed a strange bracelet in labour, and when she found out who came to pick up an orphan with triplets from the maternity hospital. Welcome back to Tales Track. I'm excited to share a new story with you. Let's get started. Polina emerged from the supermarket, bags straining against her grip. The week ahead loomed large with double shifts, leaving her little time or strength for another trip. Genka, her growing son, was constantly hungry, and she still needed to prepare for the next few days. It was already late afternoon. As she walked, a shiny dark green car parked across from the restaurant caught her eye. A young man in a stylish cocoa-coloured jacket and black turtleneck was getting into it with a swagger. Her heart skipped a beat. Ruslan. How he had changed. Living with her on an ordinary salary, he could never have dreamed of such luxury. But maybe he did dream, and that's why he found someone who could provide it. Polina had been a good match for the ambitious boy from the countryside, a native city dweller with a nice apartment. But now her role was over, and a wealthier woman had taken her place. They say a man loves the woman he invests in, not the one who drags him along. She tried to turn a simple car mechanic into a self-sufficient man, pushing him to get an education and arranging a job with her friends. That's where Ruslan met his new passion, unconcerned about her wealth. Could Ruslan even love? Or was he just using this new woman too? She was glad he hadn't noticed her. She wasn't ready for a confrontation. She was still coming to terms with his departure. Even Genka didn't know the full truth. For now, he thought his father was on a long business trip. She needed a bit more time before she could tell him. Polina reached her apartment, balancing the bags as she fumbled for her keys. Mummy, we finished reading the story about Carlson with Varvara Ilyanikna while you were away. Genka danced around the bags, his eyes bright with anticipation. That's wonderful, sweetheart. How's your throat feeling? Did you behave for Varvara Ilyanikna? Everything's fine. You're our little whirlwind. The middle-aged woman smiled, following them into the kitchen. We dissolved anti-inflammatory lozenges, and he drank raspberry tea. But I think it's too early for him to go back to the garden. He gets sweaty now and then. It's like the shoemaker without shoes. Polina sighed, rearranging the groceries in the fridge. Even though I'm a paramedic, I can't seem to strengthen my son's immunity. 1 week in daycare, 2 at home. What would I do without you, Varvara Ilyanikna? And what would I do without you? The elderly woman smiled warmly. Who would manage my blood pressure, set up my drips, give me injections? Life has a way of providing. Sit down, take a breather, I'll put the kettle on. Gennady and I not only finished Carlson, but we also made some pancakes. Polina smiling and lifting a snowy napkin, inhaling the aroma of the freshly baked masterpiece, You're My Good Fairy. Genka, curious as ever, sticks his nose into the last bag and retrieves a chocolate bunny figurine with a triumphant cry, hooray. Num, is this for me? I'm going to eat it right. Polina, weakly attempting to resist, and did the little rascal manage to have lunch? Genka, defiant, with a sweet-toothed grin, I ate all the pancakes, with jam, sour cream, and honey, and I drank all the raspberry tea. Polina, waving her hand with a smile, all right, eat your bunny, just wash your hands first. The boy runs into the hall, and the women continue their conversation. Varvara Ilyanikna, observing with her experienced eye, you seem a bit down today. Anything happened, or is it just the blues? Polina, sighing, nothing happened. It's just, I happened to see Ruslan. He looked so different. New jacket, new car. Anyone who didn't know him 7 years ago as a car mechanic would think he's a seasoned businessman. Luckily, he didn't see me. I didn't have to talk to him. Vava Ilyinichna, chiding gently, you could have talked to him. How long are you going to live without child support? Raising a son requires money, and you keep procrastinating. Polina, with frustration, if only I had that money. But not from that woman. Her presence burns me, you understand? I don't want any gifts from her. She's used to buying everyone and everything. Vava Ilyinichna, voice both gentle and firm, this isn't a gift. Consider it compensation for the inconveniences she's caused you, to put it mildly. Remember, the older your son gets, the more substantial the sums you'll need. Sort it all out at once and don't dwell on unnecessary reflections. You won't prove anything to them anyway. You'll only reinforce their impunity. Think about my words, dear. Really think about them. I'll go home now. When you're ready for a shift, bring Genka over. Polina, nodding with a mix of gratitude and resolve, thank you very much. I'll definitely... Polina walks Vava Ilyinichna to the door, her mind preoccupied with the advice she just received. The shift turns out to be tense, but Polina is used to it. After all, who fares well? Exactly. They're the ones who get at work. She's valued for her intelligence, dedication, and good nature. But for the tough challenges, well, you know who gets sent. Now, they are on their way to a mother in labour in the farthest corners of the city, where finding the right place is quite a challenge. The call came from the street to a woman in labour. Apparently, she had endured it until the very end. They had to wander through deserted streets with old houses and leaning fences quite a bit. Ivan Petrovich cursed everything under the sun, roasted the navigator that couldn't cope with this remote wilderness, this call coming right at the end of the shift. Finally, they find the woman who needs help. She sits straight on the grass, leaning her back against a tree trunk, and seems ready to relieve herself of her burden any moment now. Several bewildered passers-by stand around, not knowing how they could help at all. Casually dressed guy, loudly, wearing a baseball cap at last. Help has arrived at a snail's pace. Where have you been dragging your feet? The woman's about to give birth right on the ground, and there's no sign of medicine. Polina, silently grabbing her case, rushes over to the woman in labour. She is already in active labour. There is no time to waste. Polina firmly directing, hey guys, instead of arguing, get her into the car quickly. And warm water, hurry up with it. She won't make it to the maternity ward like this. 2 strong men immediately lift the woman onto their arms and gently carry her to the car. A quick examination confirms full dilation. The baby is already in the birth canal. She needs to give birth right here. Polina, thinking as she looks at the huge belly of the woman in labour, what weight is the baby? Or maybe she has polyhydramnios? The people in nearby houses quickly respond, and within minutes, warm water, clean sheets, and even seemingly out-of-nowhere baby diapers are brought to the ambulance. The expectant mother labours hard, not screaming, but only struggling from it. Polina's mind churns with a worrying thought. Polina to herself, I don't have any oxytocin or any medications for labour. Outwardly, she encourages herself aloud. Come on, dear, push a little more. That's it, you're doing well. Just a bit more, almost there. Suddenly, the woman ceases pushing, likely completely exhausted. Polina, pleading, now cold with sweat, has the urge to push disappeared. The labouring woman, mustering all her strength, doesn't groan but nearly roars, and the baby slides into the world, initially suspiciously silent, but within seconds filling the surroundings with cries. Polina, leaning out of the car, exclaiming it's a boy. Onlookers, deeply moved, applaud and begin congratulating each other. Polina, thinking as she wraps the tiny body in a blanket, he's so tiny. But Mum's belly hasn't shrunk much and seems suspiciously active. Could it be twins? That's quite something for a field delivery. Polina, calling the driver Ivan Petrovich. Start the car. We need to rush to the maternity ward. Looks like we have twins. Labour has stopped. We need to go. The driver flicks away a half-smoked cigarette into the grass, hurries into the cabin, and turns the ignition key. The engine sputters but fails to start. The second attempt is equally unsuccessful, as is the third. Ivan Petrovich exclaiming, slapping the steering wheel, "It's dead. I've said we need a new engine. There's no point in tinkering with this one anymore." But no, budget cutsy. And now what? Carry the mother on our back. Polina, reassuringly, "Don't worry, Petrovich. We'll try to call another team now." She dials the dispatcher's number. "Hello, our car broke down. We urgently need assistance. We have a multiple birth situation." "No? What do you mean, no? Oh, I see. Yes, sorry." Ivan Petrovich, mustache, bristling with concern. "What's happening?" Polina sighing wearily, brushing her face with her hand. "Not good. There's a triple collision with a bus outside the city. Many injured. All ambulances are there." Ivan Petrovich, cursing and diving back under the hood. Damn it all. He gathers a circle of fellow motorists, working frantically on the engine. Meanwhile, the labouring woman, sensing another contraction, grows anxious. Polina gathers herself and addresses the woman. "Polina, has the doctor diagnosed you with a multiple pregnancy?" Woman in labour, catching her breath. "Yes, they said it's triplets." Polina, frustrated but composed. "And you? Why did you wait until the last moment? You should have been admitted to the hospital earlier. With a multiple pregnancy, labour can come earlier than usual." Woman in labour, grimacing, waving weakly as pain begins to creep over her. "Who needs me there without money? They didn't like the breech presentation and were threatening surgery. And I kept thinking, maybe before childbirth, the babies themselves will settle properly." Polina sighing. "Oh, well, the first one settled correctly. Let's see how the others behave. Start pushing again. It seems the second one is on its way." For the near future, the ambulance with the labouring woman and Ivan Petrovich, stuck with the carburetor, becomes the centre of life in the nearby area. Women bring clean linens and warm water. Men with some knowledge of cars try to assist Ivan Petrovich in every way they can, and children argue about whether the next birth will be a girl or a boy. To Polina, it feels like this nightmare will never. Triplets at a late stage without proper monitoring, a high risk of complications, and births right in the car, and she is just a paramedic. She recites every prayer she can remember, but realizes she knows very few. So after the second boy cries out, Polina feels a strange calm. After tying off the umbilical cord, she announces sympathetically to the onlookers, "Polina, the second baby is born." The onlookers cheer and Polina calls for more water before plunging back into the cabin to be with the labouring woman. The third child appears as twilight falls, and half the neighbourhood has gathered around the ambulance. Polina, opening the door and shouting, "Well, Mum, you have 3 little heroes. Have you thought of names?" Polina, leaning out and shouting to the crowd, a third boy. "That's..." The crowd erupts in joyful shouts, embracing one another as though triplets had just been born to each of them. Unexpectedly, Ivan Petrovich's tired engine sputters to life. "Ivan Petrovich, let's go." Polina, urging finally, the ambulance moves through the dispersing crowd. The vehicle navigated narrow streets while the labouring woman patiently awaited arrival at the maternity ward. The boys murmured, each experiencing their own way of arriving in this world. Polina finally had a good look at the woman with multiple children. She appeared to be no more than 30 years old, but her worn clothes and the marks of life's hardships on her face made her seem much older. She had clearly seen her share of hardships in life. How will she survive with 3 all at once? Polina thought grimly, glancing at the bracelet adorning the woman's slender wrist. It was silver, completely out of place with the modest appearance of its owner. Peering more closely, Polina was even more astonished. She had seen such a bracelet once before, also on a call. They had transported a man with a damaged carotid artery. The car had been speeding to its limit, and Paulina had applied pressure to the man's neck while occasionally allowing him to inhale. On his wrist, holding Paulina's hand then, was the same bracelet. She could always recall in her memory the engraved lettering on the bracelet to E. From V. I can't believe it. How does she have such an expensive item? But I couldn't be mistaken. That's for sure. I remembered this bracelet back when we pulled its owner from the wrecked car. Everything is remembered especially sharply at the edge of life and death. But the owner of the bracelet, it seems, was a very well-off person. Paulina's thoughts, sticky and confused from exhaustion, continued to trouble her. Almost falling asleep right in the ambulance returning to the station, she couldn't stop thinking about this strange coincidence. When attending to the woman, she would definitely have to ask about it. Paulina had no doubt for a second that she would visit this woman who had miraculously managed to get through her pregnancy under completely inappropriate conditions. Such cases are unforgettable. And she also needed to ask the doctors about the babies. She was just a paramedic on duty, not a midwife, so she might have missed something. She definitely had to visit tomorrow. But tomorrow didn't work out. The tension from the previous day took its toll, and Paulina slept half the day away. Fortunately fed Genka breakfast on time by caring Varvara Ilyanikna. Then it was urgently necessary to prepare food. Then her son's long-suffering throat flared up again. And the next day she had to wait for the doctor. And then it was a shift again. In short, Paulina managed to get to the maternity hospital only a week. Everything was fine with the babies and their mother, and they were discharged that very day. In the admission room, the father was waiting. A man in worn-out clothes, scuffed shoes, but holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Imagine that, Paulina thought. A man who, one could say, is on the very edge of life, yet he took care to bring flowers to his beloved woman. His appearance seemed strangely familiar to her. No way. But as she casually approached and glanced at the stranger's neck, Paulina confirmed her suspicions. There was a scar on his neck, right where she had applied pressure to the damaged vessel. There was no doubt. It was him, the owner of the bracelet, pulled out of the wrecked car by them a couple of years ago. But what could have happened to him? Why was he in such a sorry state? The situation required an immediate explanation, and Paulina cautiously addressed the man. "Excuse me," Paulina began, her voice gentle yet firm. "I couldn't help but notice your scar. Were you by any chance in a car accident a few years ago?" The man looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and recognition. "Yes, I was. It's a miracle I survived, thanks to a paramedic who saved my life," he replied, his voice tinged with gratitude and sorrow. Paulina took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I was that paramedic, and I remember you wearing a bracelet, the same one your wife is wearing now." The man's eyes widened, and he glanced at his wife's wrist, then back at Paulina. "That bracelet, it belonged to my sister. She passed away, and it's all I have left of her. I gave it to my wife as a symbol of our family's strength and resilience." Paulina nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Life has been hard on you, hasn't it?" The man sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping. "Yes, it has. But we keep going. We have to, for our..." Paulina smiled softly, her respect for this man and his family deepening. "You're doing a wonderful job. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach." "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We appreciate it more than you know." As Paulina watched the family leave the hospital, she felt a profound sense of connection and purpose. The world was full of hardships, but it was also full of people who faced them with courage and grace. And that, she thought, was something truly remarkable. "Paulina, hello. Do you recognize me?" The man raises his head, stares intently at Paulina, and shakes his head. "No, I'm sorry, I don't." "Paulina, take a closer look. Do you remember a car accident 2 years ago? I was the one who took you to emergency care and applied pressure to your injured artery. You still have a scar on your neck from that injury. Does that ring a bell?" The man, his face contorts painfully, his forehead creases with wrinkles, his gaze becomes bewildered and helpless. "I'm sorry, I can hardly remember anything from my past. About 1.5 years ago, I woke up near a railway embankment with a blank slate in my head. Locals helped me then, homeless people. I stayed among them, wondering what to do. I have no documents, no memory. Going to the police, I might have committed something unlawful, but I don't remember anything now. I would have been completely lost if I hadn't met Lucia. She's understanding. She even helped me find unofficial work, which immediately made me feel like a proper person. Now I have a whole family, 3 little warriors at once." His face lights up with a deep inner light. "Paulina, and did you give your wife her bracelet?" Her tone inquisitive and the man, "Well, of course, what else could I give her? It's the only thing left from my past life. And in my new life, I haven't earned enough for gifts yet. Paulina, I sincerely congratulate you on the triplets. I believe everything will work out, and you and Lucia will be very happy." Lightly shakes the happy father's hand. "Paulina, now your children are coming. Welcome them." The newly minted father rushes to meet his family, while Paulina heads for the exit, feeling thoroughly unsatisfied with the information that only further confused the situation. Clearly, such well-off people do not just appear out of nowhere. It's unfortunate he remembers nothing, but finding out his name and surname should be simple. She just needs to check the emergency call archives. She roughly remembers the date. It was just before Genka's birthday. She was planning to pick out a gift for him after her shift, but they ended up buying it the next day due to an unexpected turn during her shift. But what about his memory? Without a specialist, it may not recover, and specialists need She needs to talk to Nikolai Vasilievic. He's a neurologist by profession. Maybe he can suggest something. There were no issues with the emergency call archive. The call from 2 years ago was quickly found, documenting that Rostislav Olegovich Fadiv had been brought to the emergency hospital with injuries from a road accident. He was conscious, but had lost a lot of blood. No wonder. Paulina thought, good thing they got him there at all. If that doctor from the Ministry of Emergency Situations hadn't been moonlighting with us, knowing exactly how to clamp the carotid artery to get the patient there in time. Rostislav Olegovich wouldn't be a happy father now, and the triplets wouldn't exist either. It's like he was born again. Unlike the emergency call archive, the question of possible rehabilitation unexpectedly stalled because Nikolai Vasilievich had gone on a 10-day vacation. While waiting for his return, Paulina couldn't resist visiting the happy head of the family, hoping his real name and surname might trigger some memories. But her hope proved futile. The poor man strained his memory, became upset, but couldn't recall anything significant. All that was left was to wait for the doctor. Finally, Nikolai Vasilievich returned from vacation. He listened attentively to Paulina's rather convoluted story of the unusual patient, thought for a moment, tapped his fingers on the desk, and concluded, "I won't personally take this on. I lack both the time and the suitable conditions. However, I will speak to a fellow classmate of mine. This case falls under the topic of his dissertation. He is currently studying the possibility of magnetic stimulation of specific brain areas for memory restoration. He can also provide medication therapy at his clinic. Both sides would be so to speak. I'll inform you of the results tomorrow." The outcome was positive, and Rostislav Olegovich Fadiev, still not fully aware of himself, was admitted to day care. Paulina, who herself suffered from a chronic lack of time and money, somehow managed to carve out both to visit Lucia and bring a gift, offering her assistance. Paulina didn't question why she was doing this. Circumstances had led her to invest so much emotional and physical energy into this family that its members had become like kin to her. The therapy showed results, but Rostislav's memory returned very slowly. Fragmentary childhood memories surfaced first, followed by more recent ones which gradually began to piece together into coherent narratives. However, events preceding the memory loss remained shrouded in mystery, sealed away by some unknown force. Through Nikolai Vasilievich, Polina inquired about the likelihood of full memory restoration, but received a vague answer. It's difficult to say. The brain is the least understood organ. It depends not only on which brain regions were affected and to what extent, but also on how traumatic the situation was. Only time will tell. Polina sighed, absorbing the uncertainty. She had grown so attached to this family, to Rostislav's struggle and Lucia's unwavering support, that she felt a personal stake in his recovery. She visited them often, watching as Rostislav played with his 3 little boys, Lasia by his side, her eyes full of hope and worry. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the playground where Rostislav was pushing his children on the swings, Polina approached Yasya. "How are things going, really?" Polina asked gently. Lasya smiled, though it was tinged with weariness. "We're managing. He's getting better, slowly but surely. The boys keep him busy, and sometimes I see a spark of recognition in his eyes when he looks at them, like he's starting to remember bits and pieces." Polina nodded, squeezing her friend's hand. "He's lucky to have you." "And we're lucky to have you," Lyasya replied, her voice full of gratitude. "I don't know what we would have done without your help." As Polina walked away that evening, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She didn't know what the future held for Rostislav, but she knew she would be there for him and his family, no matter what. The journey to reclaim his memories was a long one, but they would face it together, step by step, memory by memory. Time moved swiftly for some and sluggishly for others. The triplets had already begun to roll over, started on solid food, cooed and played with rattles. Yet their father still couldn't recall what had precipitated such a drastic change in his life circumstances. Polina's doubts about Rostislav's chances for full rehabilitation had begun to nag at her, but Nikolai Vasilievich unexpectedly offered hope. "There's another option," he said. "There's an artist who sometimes works wonders through art therapy. My friend knows him. They will try working with your ward. Sometimes very unexpected results occur." However, Polina couldn't oversee the progress of art therapy. Jenka's capricious body suddenly turned a regular flu into root pneumonia, forcing Polina to take a full sick leave this time, maternity leave, smoothly transitioning into her own leave of absence. Polina immersed herself in rather complex relationships with both official and alternative medicine. Rostislav's issues took a back seat, and she even flinched when she saw him sitting on a bench near the entrance, clearly waiting for her return. "Is something wrong?" Polina asked with concern. "Are the kids okay?" I remembered. Rostislav's voice was unexpectedly firm and tense. "We need to talk." "Yes, of course," Polina replied. "Let me just inform Varvara Ilyinivna." They settled on the deserted playground, and Polina asked again, "How did this happen to you?" "I was pushed out of the train," Rostislav began. "I was heading to meet business partners. A long journey, and I'm wary of flights, so I chose the train. But I didn't get far. During the first stop of it in the vestibule, some guys picked a fight. One word led to another, and I was thrown out at full speed. I couldn't remember for a long time. Just one phrase stuck in my mind: kick harder. Garon won't forgive mistakes. That's my old partner. He was very interested in Native American history and culture, hence the odd nickname. Then, during the last session, I started drawing sticks with crosspieces for some reason, and then I saw railroad tracks before me, hearing that shout in my ears. That's when I remembered everything. I tossed and turned all night, woke up Lyosya and the kids. In the morning, I couldn't take it anymore. Went to my old house, sat down in a secluded spot, looked around. And there comes my ex-wife Tatiana with this very Giron, saying goodbye with a kiss, and he drives off. Blood rushed to my head at that moment. I jumped over the fence and entered the Tatiana, seeing me, almost fainted. "You're supposed to be dead." She cries and I reply, "Did you see my corpse? Or did Sasha tell you so?" Anyway, we had a grand scandal. Everything as expected, smashing dishes, overturning furniture. Out of fear, Tanya confessed that Sasha had arranged it all, because otherwise taking away the business would have been difficult. And that accident where you saved me, his doing too. Anyway, I gave her 2 hours to pack, and Sasha's under arrest now. Tatiana is a witness in the case. Polina sat in stunned silence, absorbing the gravity of Rostislav's revelation. The pieces of his past had finally come together, painting a picture far more sinister than she had imagined. She could see the strain and relief etched into Rostislav's face. A man finally unburdened by the weight of his lost memories, but now carrying the harsh truth of betrayal. "I'm so sorry you had to go through all this," Polina said softly, "but I'm glad you remembered. It must feel like a nightmare finally ending." Rostislav nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It does, and it doesn't. I have my family now, and they mean everything to me. But knowing that someone I trusted tried to kill me, it's hard to reconcile." "You don't have to do it alone," Polina assured him. "You have Lesya, your children, and me. We'll get through this together." "Thank you, Polina," Rostislav said, his voice breaking, "for everything. I don't know how I would have survived this without your help." As they sat on the playground bench, the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the sand. Polina felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she knew they would face it together, each step bringing Rostislav closer to healing and a future free from the shadows of his past. "Polina, that's wonderful news. Now you'll have a big house and can raise the children." Rostislav, but Yusia doesn't see it that way. He sighs. "She's convinced I'll revert to my old ways and abandon her with the kids. It's impossible to persuade her otherwise." She nods in agreement, but her heart isn't convinced. "Sometimes I wish I hadn't remembered everything." "Polina, oh come on. It's just shock from the unexpected. She's only seen people like you in TV shows, living a luxurious lifestyle. And her nervous system, it probably hasn't fully recovered after childbirth." "Rostislav, I hope you're right. But how do I convince her to move in with the children?" "Polina, make her feel like the mistress of the house. It will calm her down. Do you have any old friends who could support you?" "Rostislav, thank God, yes. My childhood friend, Lyoshka. He gave me the bracelet you recognized me by. I've always wanted to ask you, what's written on it? I couldn't make out the words." "Polina, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly." She recites the first line from the Psalms. At that time, I had just taken Sasha Guron as a companion, and Lyoshka advised against it because Guron had some criminal activities going on. But I didn't listen to my faithful friend. He gave me the bracelet on my birthday, saying, "Maybe you'll understand if you read it every day." I didn't, not until I miraculously escaped death. That bracelet saved me. Without it, my life wouldn't have taken such a dramatic turn. "Rostislav, it's great to have someone reliable in life. Will you give me your new address so I can visit the children?" "Polina, who else but you?" Rostislav's eyes sparkle gratefully. "I owe you everything, my life, my sons, the memory that returned to me. I couldn't wish for a more welcome guest than you." "Polina, then I'll await your message with the address. And how about we use Tew?" "Rostislav, sure." He chuckles. "Come over in a couple of days. We should have moved by then." "Polina, okay." She nods and happily hurries home to Genka and Vavra Ilyanikna, buoyed by the realization that her efforts were not in vain. A few days later, after buying fruit for the triplets and their nursing mother, Polina and Genka visited the new family nest. The difference between the comfortable home and the small wing on the outskirts of the city was striking. Lycia looked completely bewildered amidst the comfort and splendor, unsure how to behave or wed. "Polina, why so sad?" She gives her a friendly hug. You should be happy to live in normal conditions and raise your boys here. Lucia, I can't. He barely holds back tears. I don't know how to live in such conditions. I'm afraid I'll break or damage something. I felt calmer in my little house. And besides, I'll never be like them. I grew up differently, lived differently, and she bursts into tears. Polina, you're being silly. He gently wipes the tears from Lucia's cheeks. Rostislav already had someone like them before. I think he's had his fill. Stay true to yourself. That's why he loves you. I'll teach you how to handle household appliances. Want to start right now? Lucia swallows her tears and gratefully nods. She begins the process of adapting to her new life with the nearest object. The coffee machine. Gradually, everything falls into place. Rostislav immerses himself in his newly regained business. Lysia settles into the large house, and Polina and Genka become frequent guests. Genka, not having siblings of his own, Rostislav grew fond of the lively trio racing around the house on all fours. Mom, how do they move so fast? Sometimes I can barely keep up with them, the boy wondered, as the joyful Lysia and Polina hid their smiles behind coffee cups, brewed by the intimidating-looking coffee machine at first glance. Polina, Christmas is approaching, and we need to plan our celebration. Rostislav, actually, we have a guest. He claps his friend on the shoulder. Meet Alexei, Polina. You've heard about him before. Alexei, as if I haven't heard about him. He beams with a wide smile, while for some reason Polina blushes and lowers her gaze. The holiday was a great success. Amidst the children's squeals and laughter, the adults built a snowman, danced around the growing tree outside the house, and later warmed themselves by the fireplace, holding mugs of hot tea in their chilled hands. Polina couldn't escape Alexei's interested glances, but unusually for her lively and sociable self, she seemed shy and constantly averted her gaze. Yasya, I cudges her elbow. What's up with you? You taught me and now you're acting like a scaredy cat. He likes you, it's obvious even to the naked eye. Polina, plushing and twirling a shiny ornament on the tree. Maybe he doesn't just like me. He's a prominent man and quite well off. Lysia, cuckles. I thought I was the only fool like this. Turns out it's contagious. Pole, Lyosha lost his wife a couple of years ago. He was the one pushing Rostik to introduce you, and you're all hedgehogged up. Polina, Havits, biting her lip. You know, he's someone you could fall for, and now... Yasya squints. Someone told me a few months ago that false fears need to be overcome. Can't you remember who it was? Polina says, finally meeting Lyusia's eyes. You're right. I guess I need to take my own advice. Lesya, smiling. That's the spirit. Now, go talk to him before the snow melts. Polina, pouts, taking a deep breath. Wish me luck. Lucia, shirrening, you don't need luck, Polina. Just be yourself. Polina says, I remember. I promise to do better. The rest of the evening passed casually. Alexei joked. Polina laughed, and Rostislav and Lysia occasionally stepped out to leave the children alone. But holidays sooner or later come to an end, and Polina and Genka were getting ready to head. Alexei, I'll give you a ride. My driver will be here in a moment, Alexei offered, and Polina nodded happily. A shiny black SUV rolled up right to the house. A young man stepped out and opened the doors. Polina froze in place. Polina, Ruslan. Ruslan, Annie kicks at her with bewilderment. Looks like you've settled in nicely, he finally managed to say. Polina, and here I thought you'd settled in better. She couldn't resist the sting. Does your new wife allow you to work as a driver? Ruslan gritted through his teeth, paling with annoyance. I'm single now. Alexei see Kenti caffeines, signalling for the car. All right, go on, we'll go. Polina snaps. I'll call the taxi myself. I don't need anyone's sacrifices or charity. In her impulsiveness, she wanted to shout something else, but strong male arms suddenly enveloped her tightly, and a confident voice whispered in her ear, "Alexei, silly little girl. What sacrifices? You just got burned once, and now you don't trust anyone. But it's wrong for a woman to carry everything alone. Especially such a wonderful woman like you. I'll never hurt you. Do you want me to fire him, or transfer him to a distant branch? Whatever you want, I'll do." Polina Sixtiefels, burying her nose in Alexei's strong shoulder, smelling of snow and wind, feeling his gentle yet powerful hands delicately stroking her hair scattered over her shoulders.